Yes. Yeah.
Hi, this is Misty Luminais. I'm here with Hank Smith. Today is July 2nd, 2013. This is for the Voicing in Action project. Thank you for doing this with us.
You're welcome.
So we're going to start out with some pretty general questions. Can you tell me about yourself and the history of your family?
Well, my family, as far as I know, originated in Knoxville, Tennessee, in Sevierville County. That's where I was born, and my older brothers and sisters were born. My mother also. But we moved. We were brought up north when I was about 6 months old. You know, we stayed with my great aunt for a while, and eventually I went back to my mother by the time I was 5. At that time, I found out that I had another sister, and as time went on, we had another brother. So it ended up being 6 of us, 3 boys and 3 girls. And by then, we were all living in Cleveland.
Okay. So, do you know what brought your mom from Knoxville to Cleveland?
I don't know specifically what brought her up here, but I know that she came up here at a time in her life when things weren't so great. So maybe she was looking to improve the quality of her life. All I remember, I was on a train coming up north, and she never talked much about why she moved up north. But as the years went by, I realized that she was going through a trying time in her life at that time. Yeah.
And was your father involved?
Well, I never really knew who my father was. But that's why I say she was going through a troubling time in her life, because this was right after the divorce of my older brothers and sisters, getting divorced from their father. Then I was born somewhere in there, so I grew up thinking I had the same father as them until I found out, I was about 14 years old, found out that he really was not my father, but that's a whole nother story. No, my father never was in the picture. After we came up north, after we ended up in Cleveland, and I met my younger sister, her father became like a stepfather to me. Yeah.
So, how long were you in Cleveland before you went to live with your great aunt?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how long we lived in Cleveland at that time, because like I said, I was only about 6 months when we first came to Cleveland. And when I think back on it, my earliest memory at that time was all of a sudden, I must have been about 3 or 4 years old, because I remember living with my great aunt in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I couldn't have been no more than 3 or 4 years old at that time. But I remember those times very clearly. It was a happy time in my life. It was a really good time, But we stayed there for by the time I came to Cleveland, we all came back to Cleveland to stay with my mother. I must have been about 5 years old, So, like I said, my earliest recollection was about 3 or 4 in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And then I remember distinctly when I was 5, I was about to start school down in the Woodland area, and I was 5 years old then. Yeah.
So while you were with your great aunt, your mother had a new partner and had her daughter, your younger sister.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did your mother end up staying with the father of your sister?
No. No. She kept a roof over our head and took care of us, but there was never a man involved living as, the man of the house. My mother took care of everything. Yeah. It's amazing because she's such a great mother, and I think back on how a lot of mothers was back then. A lot of mothers, my friends, had 5, 6 kids. And some of them was single parent mothers. But they took care of us so well. And then today I look around and see a lot of these younger younger adults can't seem to take care of 1 or 2 kids. And I knew many people had 5 or 6 kids back then, and they did a good job. But that's just personal observation.
Well, what do you think is different?
I think what was different is the way people are being brought up today. The way people were brought up during my time and during my mother's time, there was a lot of respect of your elders and your neighbors and things like that. And today, I don't know what happened. I guess the world just changed, and I didn't get the memo. Because I kind of like it the way it used to be. But the change. I guess it has to do with the way people are brought up these days. It's different. I guess a lot of kids are having kids, and I think that's got a lot to do with it. But then when I think back, my mother was probably 15 years old when my oldest brother was born. When I think about it, she must have been about 15. Yeah. So I guess that didn't really change that much, But I'm sure it has to do with the way the upbringing of the kids. There's a whole different train of thought now that, I have a hard time with.
So who did your mom call on for support, like while she was raising you?
Call on for support. Well, like I said, my younger sister's father, he helped us from time to time. He was somewhat of a role model to me. And, I know that he helped with my sister. But as far as support for the family, he probably helped us in that respect too. But she mostly just took care of everything. My mother was very strong, and she always knew what to do. No matter what, she always knew what to do.
Did she work?
I never remember my mother working, but we were her work, and I guess that's the way I understood it. We were her work. She didn't even drive a car for a long time. Because I knew growing up, even I got my driver's license when I was 15, and I drove her everywhere she wanted to go. My brother drove her everywhere she go. And he wasn't my stepfather, but my sister's father drove her everywhere. She didn't have to drive anywhere. But then after we were all grown and gone, she decided to get licensed, and she did. She got her license, although she drove with both feet, which was kind of unusual, and she wouldn't do it no other way, but she did get her license and got her a car and drove it. But your original question about who did she call on for support, I really don't think she called on anybody. If she did, she kept it to herself. She didn't burden the kids with these things. Whatever hardships she had, she hid them very well. Because I can imagine it must have been tough. 6 kids and you're a single mother. But she did it so well, we never knew we was poor. You know, we always had a roof over our head. We always had food. We ate well. Our clothes was always our clothes was always clean. Mine might have had a lot of patches in them, but they was always clean. You know, but they had patches on the butt, patches on the knees, but they were always clean clothes. You know, so she did well taking care of us. You know, you know.
But I guess what I'm asking then is just if there was a network of other people, like sometimes people call on extended family to watch kids while, you know, you have to leave the house, or if it was like your older siblings were really helped her like raise the younger siblings.
I'm sure that's why it was, because she didn't work. You know, she took care of us when she had to be somewhere. My older sister, my older brother, they was usually in charge. You know. And we were a very close family. You know, they took care of us. My brother, the oldest, he was like 4 years older than me. So we were like step stair kids. You know, my older sister was 2 years younger than him. My other older sister was 1 year younger than her. And I was 1 year young. So we were like step stair kids, you know. And we took care of each other. I helped take care of my little sister and my little brother, you know. In fact, we all did. By the time my little brother was born, we were all taking care of they took care of me and we helped take care of them. That's just the way it was. We all took care of each other. Yeah. But she was the kind of person that I don't think she would ask anybody for help, because I mean, she did go to get the it was called surplus back then. It was something like the welfare or whatever, where we would go get a box of food once a month. You know, we did that. She would shop at thrift stores. You know, I would always get the hand-me-downs from my brother, you know, but I was fine with it, you know. I didn't have no problem with it. Now today, kids are different. They don't know, if you try to give kids hand-me-downs now, I don't think they appreciate it like I did. Yeah. Yeah. It's a sign of the times.
And what year were you born?
I was born in 1952. Yeah. So that makes me 60 years old.
So when you were living in Cleveland, when you moved there after you lived in Bethlehem, do you remember where in Cleveland you were living?
Yeah, I was down in the central area, East 37th and Central. I started school at, trying to remember the name of that, Longwood Elementary School. It's down there off of Woodland Avenue. And I had to walk to school every day. And it was like, it had to be a good 1.5 miles. And I remember I was 5 years old and going to school, and winters back in those days was bad. And I remember walking to school. I didn't have gloves, so my mother would put a couple pairs of socks on my hands, and I balled them up, put them in my pocket. And by the time I would get to school, my face, tears running down my face. I was crying. My hands was froze. And every day, my teacher would take me by the water where I come in there crying and run water until my hands would open up. I remember that very clearly. She did that every single day, you know. But eventually, I guess I learned how to stand the cold. Yeah. But yeah, I was 5 years old then when we came back, living on Central Avenue. Yeah, those were some good, I have good memories of those days. Yeah. I guess because our family was close. It made a big difference. Yeah.
What did your neighborhood look like?
It was a nice neighborhood when we moved there. It was real nice. We lived in a set of row houses in the middle of the block. a long white building and with a number of different residences along there. People had flowers out, and it was a nice neighborhood back in the 30s. Not 30s, back on 37th and Central back then. It was still nice. Yeah.
And what did your neighbors look like?
A lot like me. It was, I guess it was a predominantly African-American neighborhood back then. I'd say that must have been in the late 50s, mid 50s, something like that. Yeah, it had to be in the mid 50s. It was predominantly black neighborhood then because I don't remember anything but African Americans living in that community when I was growing up.
And did a lot of the people have children?
Yes, yeah. There was always plenty of kids. But when you were moving to a new neighborhood, you usually have to fight, But I had a brother that he didn't like to fight, but he could fight good. So, he kind of helped get us in there, I remember some guys wanted us to join their gang, and he would not let that happen. I was 5, so he was only 9 years old, and I remember him distinctly telling these guys, we are not joining any gangs, and then he ended up getting in a fight with them that day, and I was proud of it because he beat all 3 of them up. Yeah, he made me feel good. He gave me encouragement to do the right things, Yeah, I had a strong brother too,
So how did you like school?
I enjoyed school. I had fun when I first started school. Yeah, it was fun because you got a chance to meet a lot of kids, and I developed friendships easily back then, and I was always the kind of child I liked to learn. I could read very well by the time I was 5 years old in elementary school. I probably was reading a couple of grades higher, and I pretty much, taught myself. I don't remember anybody teaching me. I used to like to read comic books, and I think that, and not only the comic books, once I learned how to read, I would read everything. The little cereal boxes, you set that cereal box down in front of me, you couldn't pour my cereal and put it up. You had to set that box right there because I'm gonna read everything on that box. Yeah. But yeah, I liked school. School was good. It was fun back then, and you had really good teachers that really made you feel like they cared. Yeah. I enjoyed school.
Was your school integrated?
Not the elementary school, not junior high, no, none of them. By the time I got to high school, there was one white boy going to the school. There was one Caucasian boy, and I mean, he just seemed like everybody else. So I really didn't realize he was white until somebody told me, I guess, because he was such a cool person, Yeah, but he was the only person that I knew that was not African American in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of interactions with white people growing up?
Not growing up. I did not have much interaction until probably the military. Most of the time I was associated in an African American community in Cleveland, Ohio. And the only time I got outside Cleveland at that time, I got to change that, because when we were living in Bethlehem, but I was real young. I was real young. When we were living in Bethlehem, we were the only black kids around. I do remember that. We were the only black kids. But then when we moved to Cleveland, everybody was black. So, yeah. So I did have interactions with other kids before Cleveland, but after I got in Cleveland, it was all African American from the time I was elementary all the way through high school. You know, and I didn't think about it. You know, when I went to every year we would go to Scranton, Pennsylvania. You know, that's where my grandmother lived, and we would go up there, and her community was a mixed community, and people always treated us well. So, you know, I never had any. I would hear all of these things, but I never had any negative problems happen to me. You know, so I just. I guess I was blessed that way, you know, because it could have been worse. I could have lived down south or grew up down south where and had to experience all that, you know, but I grew up in a different kind of community. You know. You hear about it, and you know, and you see it on the TV and stuff like that. I guess I noticed on TV, I didn't see a lot of people like myself on TV back then. And whenever I did, it made me excited, and I would watch them all the time. You know, it did make a difference to see somebody. But that's when things were starting to change in the country. You know.
Did you feel connected to the civil rights movement? I mean, you would have been in like what, middle school?
Yeah, I felt very much connected. In fact, I feel like I was part of the whole revolution of those times because of different things that happened as I got older. You know, I got exposed to different parts of life by other people. You know, when I was a kid, this was during the '65 riots, somewhere around there, mid-'60 riots over on Huff. I was accosted by an organization called the AfroSet. I had been hearing about them in the community and everything, but at this point, they were out on the forefront of trying to educate our community, people in our community. And me being young, you know, I guess they got my ear early on. So, you know, I would listen to all of the rhetoric back then, and then I would do whatever they asked me to do. And then they asked me to do some things that sometimes I don't know if I might have done the right thing or not. Because during the '60s, when you would see all of those news shows with people running through the neighborhood, ransacking stores and burning buildings and stuff like that, with the group that I was with, you know, we had a purpose, or we thought we had a purpose, because I couldn't have been no more than 14, 15 years old at that time. No, I wasn't even that old. I just got out of elementary school. I must have been in 7th grade. Yeah, so I was around that age, you know, and I must have been around 13, 12 or 13. And what happened is they convinced us that if we went through the neighborhood and burned these old abandoned buildings, it would be a good thing. You know, so the group that I was with, there was abandoned cars in the alley. There were abandoned buildings where we knew of girls getting raped in or kids getting hurt in, and the city just let the buildings just sit there and fester. So our intention was to go and burn these buildings down so the city would have to do something about it. And we did throughout that whole day. And then we finally ended up on my cousin's porch, and somebody had gotten fire hungry and fire crazy. And they mentioned something about, let's go burn down Giddings Elementary School. And I couldn't believe that that was coming up, you know. And then me and my cousin, we thought we convinced them not to do this. You know, that would be a bad thing. You know, when the school was good to us when we went to that school, and now my little sister goes to that school. I didn't want to burn the school down, and we thought we had convinced them that that wasn't a good idea. And but then my cousin went in the house, I went home, and then about 2 o'clock that morning, my mother, cause we lived right next door to the school, my mother woke me up and told me the school was on fire, and I knew exactly who did it. You know, and I went out there and watched the school burn, practically burned to the ground. Fireman got hurt because a whole side of the building collapsed on him. You know, but I'm just glad that I wasn't involved in that part. You know, and over the next few weeks, each one of them got arrested. There was, besides me and my cousin, there were like 5 other guys, two girls. And the police got each one of them one at a time. They get one, they tell on the other one. And I just knew they was coming for me because we were out there all that day, you know, prior to the school burning. But nobody told on us because we didn't have anything to do with the school. So we did the right thing, you know. And then I looked back on it, and I looked up and down Huff in that same area, and they got new houses over there now, and it kind of makes me feel good that something good came out of it. Yeah. Yeah. And but that was my introduction to the Afro set. And then they did other things. I got involved in other things because of them, and that could have not been good because, you know, around that time I started smoking pot, and they always had it, so I could always get it as long as I hung out with them, you know. So that didn't turn out to be a good thing, yeah. But at least that incident, I did learn something from that incident that I didn't want to be involved with another group of people doing something like that. It kind of opened my eyes, you know, as far as letting somebody lead you. You know, I guess that was the first time, you know, because after that, I didn't want to be involved in no organizations like that where they were talking violence and stuff like that. It just wasn't me, you know.
And like, what was their ideology? What were they teaching members?
Well, they were teaching members. I guess that's what impressed me with them at first, because they were talking about being proud of yourself. The fact that you got kinky hair and things like that. They were talking pride, and that's what impressed me in the beginning. That they helped bring pride to the people that was around there. But I didn't see a lot else they were doing, other than them talking about pride and having access to that marijuana. You know, those were the things that impressed me about them. And then after that incident with the going up and down the street burning up houses, after that, and the school incident, I was kind of done with them at that point. You know, the only reason I would go back and hang one of them is because they knew how to get marijuana, or I knew I could get it from them. So all of their rhetoric really didn't mean anything to me after that, you know, because I just couldn't believe that my friends was all in jail now, you know, because we followed this group, you know.
How long were you associated with them? Like, how old were you when you stopped associating with them?
When I stopped, let's see, I must have been about 16 years old. Yeah.
So you were in high school at that time?
I was in high school by then, yeah.
And how were you doing in school then?
I wasn't doing too good because then, I did good as far as my grades and everything, but I found myself cutting school a lot. I would leave and actually go over to another school. I would leave East Tech and go over to Glenville, or leave Glenville and leave East Tech and go up to Kennedy, because that's where all of we thought at that time that's where the sophisticated ladies were. That's what we used to tell ourselves, So we would go to Glenville or Kennedy to meet girls, and we would cut school and go do that, you know. But I still managed to keep my grades up, I did pretty good. I did enjoy school up until around that time. When I got to be about 16, school was starting to bore me. You know, I never was into sports a lot. I ran track for a while. I went out to play basketball and ended up JV, and since since I was just JV, I didn't want to play anymore. So now I tell you what I did like about school. I was in dramatics club, and I was the only boy in dramatics club, so that was fun. In fact, that's why I joined it. Because I knew I would be the only boy. All of the plays that they would have would be centered around me. And that was fun. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being in the choir. Those are the extracurricular activities that I was involved in. I enjoyed them more than the studies because I just lost track of my academics. It wasn't interesting to me anymore. Yeah.
Did you feel like you had teachers that were challenging you?
I don't. There was one. I had an English teacher that I liked because he would challenge me in different ways. I guess because he knew I used to like to read, so that helped a lot. But as a whole, I don't feel like I was being challenged enough. Sometimes I felt like I knew just as much as these teachers, And why are they teaching me this? I'm not going to need this when I get out of here, But I didn't have anybody to ring me back in and let me know that I was not thinking properly. I was thinking like a 16-year-old. I didn't have anybody to break it down to me. So I kind of feel like I've been on my own ever since I was a kid, because as I got older, then I found out when I was 14, who I thought was my dad wasn't my dad, and that really messed me up, because I went that far and I used to enjoy, taking my friends over to my father's house so they can meet my father. And then one day he tells me he's not my father, and that just took everything out of me. I remember that day. I remember it very clear. It was raining outside. And when he told, because I went home one night and my mother said, go over to Mr. Doc's house. Mr. Doc was one of our local neighbors. Your father has something to tell you. And I went over there and that's what he had to tell me. He wasn't my father. And I remember not understanding what's going on and going outside and just running. And I ran in the rain. I'll never forget that. But I had to accept it. But I couldn't accept it. It was a hard thing because, my father was important to me. So that was a bad thing for me. And I think I started rebelling at that point. That's when I started rebelling. I had who I considered my stepfather, my younger sister's father. We still had him, and he was always a good person. So, and he even taught me a skill. He was a body and fender man. He always owned his own garage, and he would let me and my brother come down there and work, and he taught us how to do the job, how to do the work. And when I was a kid, I could do body work just as good as any of the men, because of the skills that he gave me. So I kind of leaned towards him at that point in my life. But I found myself being a lot more rebellious after that, you know. And that's probably why I started cutting school so much. When I think back on it, all of that happened right around that time, and my life was kind of in a downward spiral for a while, And then my daughter was born. I was only 15, and she was born. And I remember going to court and getting in front of the judge. And I mean, the wording they used to use back in court, because one of the things that the judge asked me, is this your bastard child? I'll never forget he said that. This right in court. Is this your bastard child? And I told him it was, and then he told me how I was going to have to get a job and do this and do that, And that's what I did. I did what he said. I got a job. I was 15 years old. I got a job working in a hotel as a busboy, and then I got promoted to, I don't know what the next job was, but I was carrying stuff, doing the, carrying stuff to people's room when they wanted it, Yeah, room service guy, So, that was one of I always had work, even when I was a little kid coming up. I always did things because my mother didn't have money for us. So I had to do things in order to get money. And I was a good hustler, But working in that hotel, that was like my first real job as a teenager. As a kid, I had jobs working in grocery stores, stuff like that. But that was my first real job, where they taking taxes out and stuff like that. But I always made sure that I took care of my daughter. I had that much sense, even when I was a kid, to make sure she had what she needed. The judge didn't have to tell me that. I would have did it anyway.
So how was that being a teenage parent? Were you surprised to find out your partner was pregnant?
No, I wasn't surprised. I mean, it happened. I've heard of it happening around, around that time. I think my older sister, she had just had a child. My brother had just had a child, but both of them had gotten married. But in fact, now that I think about it, my child was born first, before theirs. But they were all born right around the same time, But it made me feel like, it made me feel mature. Now I have a child, and it's important that, and I always wanted to make sure she knew how much I cared. I did everything I could for her.
And how many children do you have?
Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4. Yeah.
Do they all live in East Cleveland?
No. 3 lived in East Cleveland. I have 1 in Virginia Beach that was born when I was in the military. Yeah.
And how are you involved with their mothers?
Well, my daughter's mother, we never really got along. We were friends. We were okay because we had a mutual child. But after that, our relationship wasn't quite good. All I wanted, as far as her was concerned, was make sure my daughter's taken care of. And after that, my first wife that I met down in Virginia Beach, we still got along well. We got along well. But then that marriage only lasted 7 years, and then we broke up, and I couldn't wait to get married again. Yeah, I think I liked the idea of being married and having the responsibilities and having that partner that, because I remember when me and my first wife broke up and I would see other couples together, I would feel so bad that I didn't have nobody close in my life, and it seemed like everybody was so happy. That was a bad feeling. So when I met my current wife, I was glad. I did good because both times I married some great women. I made some good choices as far as women were concerned. To get married to. The first one, we had our issues, but she was still a great woman. And my wife now, we've been together over 35 years, so it must have been good. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna pause this.
Okay.
Okay, so before we paused, we were talking about your children, but I kind of want to back up a little bit. You were in the service.
Yes.
So did you go into the service directly after high school?
Yes. Yeah. I dropped out in the 12th grade, so I could join the service. And they did take me. My mother signed for me. I guess I was beginning to get in trouble at that point. And we felt like the best thing for me to do is get away from there. And that's exactly what I did by going to the service. I saw my friend come home. He had been in the service. He had finished school, went to the service, and he was one of my best friends. And he came back and he was looking sharp in his uniform, and we was over at my house and we were sitting over there drinking beer, and we were just so impressed with the way he was carrying himself. And my cousin and I decided that night we're going to the military. And I think the next day we went down and joined. But when I got into the military, I got my GED. So I was glad that I was able to finish my education. Well, it wasn't regular school, but I think GEDs was just coming out then. So it was good that I was able to get it wasn't a diploma, but I was able to get my GED.
And what branch did you join?
I was Army.
And what unit?
When I first went in, when I went into Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I'll never forget that. That was my very first time I flew on an airplane, and I was 17 years old then, and that was the first plane I had been on, and the plane had propellers on it, and it caught on fire in midair, and we had to make an emergency landing, and it was scary, and we landed okay, but from that day on, I was really crazy scared about flying, and but I was on my way to the military, and from then on, for the next 3 years, they flew me around the world. I don't know how many times, and I was so uncomfortable. When I finally got out of the military, I didn't fly again for 20-something years. I'll never forget that. That very first time I flew on a plane, and coming back from overseas, I get on the plane and I try to drink as many of those little bottles of scotch that I could, but it never helped. And I remember coming back from overseas, and we flew from Okinawa to California, and then flew from California to Chicago, and ran into a snowstorm. And I'm already I can't wait to get back to Cleveland so I don't have to get back up in these planes again. But they couldn't come into Cleveland because the snow was so bad. And they we had to land in Chicago, and we waited there. And at that point, I wasn't going back up. I caught a bus from Chicago back to Cleveland. And I didn't fly again for 20 years after that, more than 20 years. But I'm sorry, I must have got away. I just started thinking about something. We were talking about.
What unit are you in?
Oh, okay. At that time, I was in Charlie Company. Well, that was basic training, but the main part of my military experience was with the 573rd Transportation Unit. That we went overseas. We went to Nam. I wasn't there but a couple of months. So some things happened, and I ended up in Okinawa at that point. So I did my tour in the service. I thought that was a good experience. I had my tour in the military. It was an eye-opening thing. This was during the early 70s, 70, 71, 72. I was in an organization. I always seemed to gravitate towards some organization. Usually I was the one that was started because I didn't like, I wasn't a follower. After that experience with AfroSat, I thought I would be the leader. That was my intention. If I was going to organize to do something, I was going to lead it. And that's what I did from then on, because I started an organization in high school, then I started another organization in the military, but I guess I'm getting off track again.
What kind of organization?
Well, when I was in school, we had an organization called USA, United Students for Action. And what we did is I was one of the co-founders of the organization, and we changed the dress code. We even had the teachers allow us to have a place to go smoke cigarettes. I mean, it was that's just how it was. The organization, I guess they just didn't want the trouble that we could give them, because we did some bad things. We was setting fires in the trash cans just to move everybody else. I mean, did really crazy stuff when I think about it now. But we did change the dress code. We could wear blue jeans and whatever we wanted to wear to school. Like I said, we got them to. We talked them into letting us have a place to go smoke cigarettes. We made a lot of changes, but as soon as our crew left that school, it all reverted back. They just wanted to get rid of us. But that was my organization in high school. And then when I got in the military, when I was stationed down at Fort Story, Virginia, that's around Norfolk, around Virginia Beach. It was right in Virginia Beach, to tell you the truth. And I started an organization down there called United Black Servicemen's Coalition. And because we were right in an area where they had Navy was down there, Marines were down there, and the Army was down there. And I started knowing people from all of the areas around there, from the different branches, because they would come out to our club, what at the time was called the 123 Club. And I was in charge of that club, so I used to do things like take a bus into town and go pick up women all over the town, pick up girls all over the town and guys, and bring them back to the base and just to party in our club. So our club became very popular. And so I got to know all of the black servicemen around, and I was in the Army, and we had the Navy and the Marines, and we all got together and formed this coalition where we would meet in the 123 Club. The 123 Club was an enlisted club for the lower enlisted people, not the NCOs, not the non-commissioned officers, but the lower branch, like the E1s, E2s, and E3s. This was a place for them to go, and fortunately, I was the one that was in charge of it. So we met a lot of people, and we would have our meetings there to talk about different things, different problems we were having as black servicemen. And we would present these problems to the post adjutants and people like that to try to get our agendas across. And in a lot of cases, we were successful. If there was some kind of incident with a serviceman, he could come to us and we would advise him and things like that. But we would all meet twice a month at my club. So that's another organization that I was involved in that I had something to do with. And I think we got a lot done back then.
What kind of issues were you addressing?
We were addressing guys who felt like they had been discriminated against. The fact that afros was real popular back then, and we was trying to get them to let us wear our afros, but we never could get that across. But they did give us a certain length that we could have. At one time we had to cut it military style, but as we went on, we were able to get some kind of inches on our hair. So we did accomplish something. But it was basically some kind of some person might have felt they was discriminated against in one way or the other, and those are the kind of issues that we would approach.
Did you ever feel like you were discriminated against?
In the military, I don't. I guess because I carried myself in a way where, I wasn't going to let anybody make me feel lesser in any kind of way. So I did not accept discrimination. And I think that helped me a lot. I just didn't accept it. And it helped me get through life without feeling a lot of things that I talk to other people about. I didn't get those feelings because I wouldn't accept them. And I think that has a lot to do with who I am.
So, where all were you stationed?
Oh, well, I was stationed in Virginia, at Fort Story, Virginia. I was stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana. That was at Leesville. That's a whole nother story. But I ended up, I went to Vietnam, South Vietnam. I wasn't there too long a period of time. There was an incident because I worked at that point, I was working with a supply unit, and we were carrying a truck of various supplies, and the truck was attacked. A few people got killed, I was injured, and it was not a good experience at all. It was a bad experience. I ended up after that in Okinawa. That's where I did my recuperation, and I ended up getting stationed there after that. So I spent the better part of the rest of my career, my service in Okinawa, Japan. And then I had an incident over there where I was driving down the street and had an accident, and a local national was killed, and he ended up, I ended up almost having to go to jail behind it because they don't believe in hitting a pedestrian. If you hit a pedestrian over there, no matter what circumstances, you're wrong. And they were about to send me away for 3 years at no hard labor. like that was supposed to make me feel better, but no. Fortunately, I had saved enough money to pay whatever fine they wanted me to pay. But I noticed while I was being interrogated by those Japanese lawyers and police, they would never ask me about the accident. They all wanted to know about my family and what my family did, what my father did, what my mother did, what my brothers do. You know, they wouldn't ask me about the questions about the accident. I couldn't understand that. But fortunately, it was some people from, I think, Civil Liberties Union was over there, because my only option at that point was, before I met these civil liberties people, was to have a Japanese lawyer, and I didn't feel comfortable with that, you know. But that's what the military told me. Well, we're under Japanese jurisdiction, and the only thing that we can do, we have to turn you over to the Japanese, but the only thing we can do is give you this list of lawyers. Every one of them was Japanese lawyer, you know. And then I found out that no matter what, I would have been wrong. And the civil liberties people came, and they came to help, and they did everything they could. But still, all the money that I had saved and all the time I had been in the military, they took it all away from me, you know. And I had been saving for like 3 years, you know, and everything and I was a good soldier, to tell you the truth, you know. But that kind of disappointed me because they didn't back me up, you know. They brought me over there to that country, you know, and they just turned me over to them. And so I really felt bad about that. There was another guy, and he had an accident. He was going through the same thing I was going through, but he didn't have the money to get himself out, and he ended up doing time over there, you know. So and at that time, like I said, I was a good soldier, and I was all ready to re-enlist. But after the government treated me the way they did, I just got out. I got out. It was a bad experience. I got out, and but I thought about that guy that I killed over there for a long time, you know, because I found out later that he might have committed suicide and used me as a tool, you know. Because it was one of those days I was driving down the street. It's raining hard. And the way those streets are, you drive down the street and you see there's bars along the street, and there's no sidewalk. The cars are parked right outside the bar. So, you know, I saw the man come out of the bar and standing in between two cars, and my thought was that he was going to wait till I got past. But as soon as I got close enough to him, he ran out in front of my vehicle, and I couldn't stop, you know. But it really made my life miserable for a while. I felt bad about him, but then I found out that he might have used me because he was like the local drunk in the neighborhood, you know. And his brother was like a high-end attorney, you know, and his brother wanted to just, if it was up to his brother, he would have just forgot all about it. Just not forgot about it, but he wouldn't have pressed charges. It was the Japanese government that pressed charges against me. And, you know, like I said, they asked me about my finances, my family, and what we do, because at that time, people thought that the saying was that everybody, if you come from the United States, you're rich no matter what. You're rich, you know, and that's what a lot of people believed back then. But it wasn't true, you know. But they got their money, you know. But like I said, I thought about that guy for a long time. You know, it was a bad experience, you know. Because I even saw the Japanese police in there because I went over to the room where he was at, and I could see him squeezing his injured leg, and he couldn't tell, he couldn't answer their questions. But I couldn't understand, why are they hurting the man? And then I thought he was alive because I spoke to the doctor that day, and the doctor said he's going to be all right, which, I said, well, good. I went home. And the next day, turned out the man was dead. And he was all right the night before. So I really don't know what all happened after I saw that policeman squeezing his leg. I don't know what happened after that. So I really feel like something more went on than me hitting that man with a car. Something else happened, but I don't know what happened. It's troubled me all my life.
Did you speak any Japanese?
Just a little. I could, say greetings and stuff like that, or ask a girl if I could sit next to her, or, stuff, I could flirt. I could do different little things that would help me. I lived in a community where I was surrounded by the local nationals. I didn't live on base. I lived in a town called Machinado, and I had my own house, a 2-story house, and it was funny because it was a cinder block building, 2 stories high, and that's where I lived. And all my friends would come over and we would party. This was back in the 70s, so you could imagine what it was like, But all around my place, where the locals live, they lived in little shanties and stuff like that. And I was like king of the world. That's the way I felt back then, because they would all come to me and ask me to buy them different things, but get them cigarettes or get them some liquor or something, because I could get it, by me being in the military, I could get it a lot cheaper than they could, So, I would get them whatever they wanted. So I became friends with all my neighbors, Yeah. So I could speak a few things. Like I said, I would I never learned no more than what I could say just in greetings and stuff like that.
Okay, so I'm not trying to make you feel old, but when you say it was the 70s and I know what that was like,
yeah.
I actually don't.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Yeah.
So what was it like?
Well, that was in a time when there was a lot of free-spirited people around, and I was as free a spirit as anybody back then. I guess I indulged in the drug world and the drinking and the partying. I did it all back then. I was. That's when. It was just a great time to be alive and be young back then. Jimi Hendrix, and it was just a good time. I was always into music, so I enjoyed all the greats. I got a chance to hear all the greats before they started dying off, and not only hear them, I got a chance to see most of them. But those were good times. I mean, they even had concerts over there in Okinawa where people would come over there and perform for us. So I got a chance to have some, and there was a lot of outdoor concerts back then, where you spend days, spend a whole weekend out in the park somewhere just having a good time. But I got involved in that whole culture. Yeah.
So you said earlier that the first time you really interacted with white people was in the service. How was that for you?
It was good, because I got along with everybody, So I started meeting people, and I started finding out that I guess that's when I made my determination, after all of the stuff that you hear growing up, and you know, about different peoples and different things like that. And then when you get in the military and you get to travel, and you start learning that there's good and bad in everybody, no matter the color of their skin has nothing to do with it. And I guess that's when I learned all of that. I didn't have to hear somebody telling me stuff anymore. I'm going by experience on the people that I meet. And I found out that it's good and bad in everybody. I don't care if they were black or white or Japanese or whatever. I met a lot of Indian guys that I got along with well. I'm talking about local American, you know what I mean, not Indians.
Like Native Americans?
Native Americans, that's the term I wanted. Yeah, I got involved with a lot of Native Americans, and they were good people, you know, and you hear all of these things, but I developed good friendships with a lot of people of a lot of different nationalities. And, you know, and it made me feel so good because I can embrace, you know, no matter what somebody else's culture was, I would seek out that culture and try to learn more about it, and I can embrace their culture. I found that's just the kind of person I am, you know. And the same way in the United States, different areas I've lived, different places, people are different, you know, but I can embrace just about any kind of environment, you know. I find it interesting, you know. Yeah, but yeah, when I was in the military, I had a lot of experience with different nationalities, and it was an eye opener for me. Yeah.
But do you feel like when you were in Okinawa, like I've heard other soldiers comment on how in the United States people are very aware of this person is black, this person is white, but when you go abroad, that people just recognize you as Americans rather than necessarily defining you as black or white. Did you find something similar?
No, you know, places they do make a distinction. Places I've been in Okinawa, they made a distinction. In the Nam, they made a distinction. You know, they had a different term for black people, a different term for white people, and I found out that a lot of times the locals in whatever country it was, even though they thought we were rich, they still looked somewhat. I think that some of them still put us down because, like, there were rumors going around in Japan and Okinawa when I was over there. Some of them older people, I mean, they talked about black people having tails and stuff like that. And, you know, and I wondered, they can't really believe that, you know, but some of them older people might have. I don't think the younger people did, but there was stuff, there were things that I've heard, you know, that made me know that they didn't look at everybody the same. Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, none of it ever bothered me because, you know, I just wouldn't let it. I just wouldn't let racial remarks or anything like that, I wouldn't let it bother me. You know. I remember one time, this was in upstate New York, and we were at this local bar, and we had been drinking, but something was wrong. This guy, I don't know, maybe he got drunk or something, and he called me a nigger, and hollered out in the bar, "Look at this nigger in here." I remember that, but at first I wanted to punch him in the face, you know, but I didn't. I sent him a drink over there, you know, and he came over there and he sat down, and then he started talking to me like he had good sense. But I couldn't understand why he acted like he did, because I guess he was expecting the rest of the bar patrons to react differently than what they did, but they kind of shut him down, you know, which was a good thing, you know. And I sent him a drink over there, you know. It didn't bother me at all, You know, because I knew some of the people in there, and the people in there knew me. So, you know, I just could not let somebody else's ignorance make me react in the wrong way, because it would have been easy to do. And the town I was in, I might have ended up in jail real easy, you know. So it worked out, you know. From then on, whenever he would see me in there, he'd always speak after that. Because I guess, I don't know, maybe he developed a respect for me. Because I could have reacted very stupid. You know. Yeah.
All right, so we got you to 1972.
Yeah.
When you got back to the Cleveland area, where did you move?
In 72? No. I didn't get out to service till 73. You know, I got out in 73. And I went back to my neighborhood where my where my mother was still living in the house that the house that I grew up in. This was on East 73rd Central, because we had moved up Central. You know, we started on 37th and ended up on 73rd. And I moved right there on Central, around the corner from my mother. At the time, my first wife, Pam, she was in, she was staying with my mother before I got out. But by the time I did get out, she had moved to East St. Louis, where her father lived. And she was staying there. So when I got out, got the apartment and everything, then I drove up there and got her and brought her back. And we started our life, you know. Yeah.
Actually, I did want to ask you, did you work with any female soldiers?
Yes. Not many. Not many, but I did work with a lady who was a female soldier in that servicemen's club that I was working in. She was in charge of it, and basically she was an older lady, and she kind of took me under her wing. You know, she took me under her wing, and she let me run the place the way I wanted to run it, you know. And she's about the only military person that I really worked with as far as females were concerned, because most of my tour was, I worked with men, you know. Females wasn't as prevalent in the military when I was in there as it is now, you know. But I know that there were, but we didn't see many of them back then. You know.
So when did you marry your first wife?
1970.
So before you went in the service?
No, I was in the service. Yeah, I was in the service. I had finished basic training. I had finished AIT, Advanced Infantry Military. I advanced infantry training. I finished that, and I was stationed at what was was supposed to be my permanent station, which was Fort Story, Virginia. And I met my first sergeant's daughter, and that's who I ended up marrying. Yeah, yeah. I met her down in Virginia. Yeah, and that was a good time. That was fun. Because, like, I was still 17 years old, you know, and you know, I thought like a 17-year-old, but I was in the military, you know, and it was a good time. I had my own, you know, after we got married, I had my own apartment. I had a second job. I was going around selling door-to-door vacuum cleaners. Yeah, yeah. I was a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman in the evening, and I was in the Army in the daytime. But most of the time I was in the military, I didn't stay on base. I always had a place, a bunk on base, but I always sought out a house wherever the local community was, you know. So that's where we started off.
And was she with you in Japan?
No. She came when I went to Japan. When I went overseas, period. When I first went overseas, she came up and lived with my mother. And while I was overseas, by the time I got to Japan, she had left and moved up with her father in East St. Louis. Yeah.
And did you have any children together at that point?
No, not at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what did you do? You got your place. Your wife came, lived with you. What did you do after that?
Well, I got a job at Jones and Laughlin Steel. You know, I was working at a steel mill. Had a great job. I mean, I was making like I was $15 an hour was good money back in 1973. That was a good job. And the job that I had to do, I was operating a teletype machine. And it was such an easy job. It was just unbelievable. They was giving me this kind of money, you know, because I could finish everything I had to do within 2 hours. And then I would have the rest of the day to just try to kill time. And they give me $15 an hour. And then I would pull doubles. You know, you pull doubles and you get time and a half and stuff like that. It was just amazing how much money they was paying, you know, but it was a good job. Yeah. Yeah. That was Jones and Laughlin.
So, when did you get to East Cleveland?
Well, I got to East Cleveland when, let me see, what year was that? 74, I think, the first time. It was 74, 75, somewhere along there. I moved over to the high rise that they have on Superior Avenue. It's called Forest Park Tower. It's the only high rise outside of downtown. You know, I mean, I lived on the 22nd floor, and I really thought I was something, because at that time I was just about 19 years old, you know, and I'm living in a high rise overlooking, I could see all the Lake Erie, I could see downtown. I was on 22nd floor. Eddie Levert of the OJs lived above me. You know, it was just you know, for a 19-year-old. And at that time, the Jeffersons was on TV. So I kind of felt like I was just as good as George Jefferson. Yeah, because I was living in a high rise, you know. That was right around that time. But that was around 74, 75 that I first moved to East Cleveland. It was a much better place to live back then. In fact, I moved in this direction because East Cleveland was the kind of community that you respected. You know, I mean, when you got to East Cleveland, you obeyed the speed limit, you obeyed the stop signs, and East Cleveland had a good reputation as far as I was concerned. A lot of people I knew didn't like coming this way because the police were tough. But I guess that's kind of what impressed me. You know, you would see signs all around the cities telling you about litter, and if you get caught littering, you had to pay $50 fine. And this is the kind of community I want to be in. You know, I did move back out periodically because I bought a house over on 82nd and Superior. You know, I bought a house for like $15,000. Gave them cash money for it. You know, and you know, it's just amazing. $15,000, and it was a 5-bedroom house with a finished attic and a finished basement. $15,000. You know, yeah. And I go by there sometime and I still see that the house is still there. You know, it looks nothing like it did when I was there though. You know, the whole community is falling apart just like a lot of these other ones. But I just thought that was. But I moved over there for a while, and that's the house that me and Pam broke up in. She moved back to Virginia, and at that time I had gotten a job up in the Poconos. So I moved up to Scranton because my grandmother was up there, and that would kind of get me started to work in this plant up in the Poconos. This was Chamberlain Corporation, and we manufactured missiles for the government. Great job. I was a payroll analyst. What I did was walk around this plant and identify everybody and the job that they were performing, because periodic they would be switched from one job to another, different people, and my job was to keep account of it and make sure that they got paid correctly for the job that they were doing. And it was amazing because it was over 500 something people that was working in that place, and my mind was so sharp back then. I could look at a person and I would know his name, his social security number, and his job classification number, without looking at the paper, But like I said, I was 19 years old and my mind was still sharp. It's just amazing how much I could remember back in those days. Ain't no way I could remember something like that now. But I'm talking 500, and the one thing about it, I was the only black person in that whole plant. And I knew. I said, good, I got this job. I'm going to move fast, because this was the time of, what was the word they call it, where they was advancing minorities fast in companies. I forget the term that they used back then.
Affirmative action?
That was it. That was the time of affirmative action, but it was another word that they would use to move people up fast. There was another word we used to use back then. I can't think of what it is. But it was all about affirmative action then. And I just knew that I was going to move fast because I already had a good position in the company. And I was the only black in the whole company. And but it turned out I was all excited about the job. And I even picked the position I wanted out. I was ready to move, and I had made the right connections in there. And then, because when we first got there, they showed us a video of the missile. They had us sit down and watch this video, and it was a beautiful missile that we was building, and they would shoot it off in this cannon, and it had all these grenades that it throws as it's going through the air, and then it had this big warhead. It was amazing. And we stockpiled those missiles for like 2 years. And then it turned out the missile blows up before it get where it's going. It was, and all I could, and then they shut the plant down. They got all these missiles stockpiled and can't sell them, but now that as I've gotten older, I realized that somebody knew that this thing was defective. You don't spend that, because they retrofitted this whole company. And the company originally sold garage door hangers, but they refitted the whole company so that we could build missiles. This was when computer automation and all this started coming into being. And they put all these computers in there, and they spent big money to make this plant work and to build defective missiles. But like I said, somebody knew that. Somebody knew those missiles was defective. And what ends up happening, they end up selling these missiles to some third world country that was probably shooting back at us, and they was defective. They was no good, but that was all taxpayer money that built that plant and stuff, and that made me think a lot. This is taxpayer money, and then for me to be a part of it and to see what really happened, that put a lot on my mind then.
So before we paused, we were talking about you were working in the Poconos.
Yes.
What years were you there?
That must have been from 76 to 79.
Okay. Can you think back to your earliest memories of East Cleveland and tell me what life was like back then?
The earliest memories of once I permanently moved here, because my earliest memories was riding through East Cleveland. Before I even moved in this direction, I was still living down in the hood. And a lot of times we would ride, when I was a teenager, we'd be riding around in the car, smoking pot and drinking beer. And whenever we would get close to East Cleveland, everybody had to put everything up at that point. Yeah, get rid of beer, no smoking, and that's what I remember distinctly about East Cleveland back then. We had to stop anything we was doing and straighten out.
Okay, so we had just been talking about your earliest memories of East Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that was the earliest memories of thinking about, no matter what you're doing, if you're doing something wrong and you ride through East Cleveland, you better stop it when you get in East Cleveland. That's the earliest I remember. That was before I even moved here. Now, the earliest, once I moved here, was on this street where I live now, Milan Avenue. When I moved here, there was still a few white people on the street. One all the way down on the end. There was one down about midway on this end down here. And there were about 3 white families on the street. But once I got here, I noticed they were starting to move out too. Within the year, those 3 families were gone. And
what year was that?
That was in 1980. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was 1980.
Can we talk about when you were in the high rise?
Yeah.
So, you said, were you friendly with your neighbors in the high rise?
Oh yeah. It was a great experience because there was a nightclub on the penthouse where they played jazz. And I saw all the great jazz artists up there. So we had a certain rapport with everybody who lived in that building at that time. Eddie Levert from the OJs lived in the apartment right above me. It was kind of funny how I found out because I got on the elevator and I'm looking at this guy on the elevator with me and I'm telling him, man, you look familiar. You look like somebody I know, but I can't remember your name. And he started fooling with me then, started laughing. You know who I am, And then he finally told me he was Eddie Levert. And it turned out he lived right in the apartment above me. So it was good to meet one of the OJs and know that I lived in the same building as he did. But we got along very well. It was mixed. It was a diverse community in there. I knew white people in there. I knew it was predominantly black though, but I did know there was quite a few white people lived in that building. But everybody seemed to get along well. I don't remember any race issues or anything like that when I was living there. Yeah. But it was a nice building, had cleaners in there, and you didn't have to go out there. It had a swimming pool on top of the building. It's great. Yeah.
So, were you still kind of doing the 70s party thing at that point?
Let me see. This was in the mid-70s. No, I was getting more mature then, and I was starting to do the things necessary to take care of home and going to work every day, I still partied, but not like I did back in the early 70s, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, By the time I was married and I took on responsibilities, yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering how that, you had said that you wanted to move to East Cleveland because it was such a well-ordered city. Like,
Yeah.
How that was different than maybe like the environment you grew up in.
Yeah, I guess that's what I liked about East Cleveland because you know, the environment I grew up in, you know, it was not diverse. You know, now by this time I have been to the military and I've got to meet other people. You know, and the community I lived in was still predominantly black. You know, I thought moving to East Cleveland would change that because I prefer a more diverse environment. You know, but once I got here, even that changed, and it's still back. Now I'm back to, you know, I moved here in 1980. Within 5 years, it was predominantly black again. You know, it's back in the same kind of community. You know, I really hate that the community is not diverse like some of the other ones. You know, but I've been here so long, and my house is almost paid for, and I'm not going anywhere at this point unless I hit the lotto. Yeah. So I guess I'm stuck here now, and I'm just hoping that with the changes, that we can get the right elected officials in here and help this city move in a more positive direction, you know, and maybe the future can be more diverse than what it is, you know, but I really don't think the city is going to grow much until that happens. I mean, I've seen some of the same things happen in areas like Tremont. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with Tremont and Ohio City, but these were two communities that I remember was in worse shape than East Cleveland. And that wasn't very long ago. But the people, the business community, and the elected officials started working together, and look at them now. You know, I mean, those two towns are thriving. You know, I don't see any reason why we can't do the same thing. But it's not going to happen in East Cleveland until you start getting some more diversity in here. A lot of people don't want that to happen. You know, there's a lot of people in the city that's against it. But for me, in my opinion, I don't think we're going to get very far unless we start embracing a more diverse community. I mean, we're right next to Euclid Heights and Cleveland Heights. South Euclid and Cleveland Heights. We're right next to them, and you know, we should all be able to grow in that respect. You know, look at Cleveland Heights. When I first moved in Forest Park Tower down here, I was in East Cleveland, but the next border was Cleveland Heights in the Coventry area, which I love that area, and I still do today. You know, I mean, there's no reason why we can't grow like they did. You know, I mean, they've been that community has been diverse ever since I can remember, and they still seem to get along well over there. So there's no reason we can't do the same thing here. Yeah.
So, what are your fondest memories of East Cleveland?
The fondest memories of East Cleveland, that would probably be when my kids was little, raising my kids on this street. Milan Avenue was a good street back then, and the kids would all play together out in front of our houses, and they all seemed to gravitate to our house because I guess I really don't know why, but for some reason they all seem to gravitate here. You know, oh yeah, I know why, because I used to pile them all up in my van and take them out to amusement parks or just to the park or take them to the basketball court. I used to have a bus full of kids, you know, and then when my son was getting old enough to be a Cub Scout, I took on the responsibility to be a Cub Scout leader in the community, which they hadn't had one for a long time. So those were my best memories, because when I talked to the kids today that remember all those times, they bring them back up, and it makes me feel good that they think about that, because we had some good times. I used to take them over to the parks, to Cleveland Metro Park sometimes, and get them lost on purpose, just so we can find our way back. And they remember that. They remember those things. They used to feel lost, the fear of feeling lost. But I always knew where we were. But I always made them think we didn't. And it was a good experience. Well, I'd say my fondest experience was bringing my kids up when my kids were little.
So the other people that lived on your street, they were mostly families?
At that time, yeah. At that time, it was a lot of families, and but most of them are gone. Some of the older people still stuck around. There's about maybe 6 of us that's still homeowners on the street that have been here for a long time. About 6 of us. The rest of the houses on the street, we have a couple that has good tenants that's been there for a long time, but the majority of them are like transit houses. People come, stay 6 months, and they're gone. It's been a relatively good street over the years, pretty quiet. Lately, we've been getting drug activity. There was 2 houses down the street that was selling drugs. You know what they're doing because when you see the traffic and different things going on down there and all the noise that they make, but we as a street club, we did what we needed to do, and they took one of the houses out. Now all the operation is at the other house, and we're working on that one now. We don't want this kind of activity over here because it brings down our community. Like I said, we've had a good street on Milan for many, many years. And when something like that comes, it's disruptive. Already my property value has gone down so much, it's unbelievable. But all I do is I just do the best I can with what I have. Try to make it the best home I can make it. But I got houses to the left of me, houses across the street of me, falling apart. They're gonna be torn down, but I'm even ready for that. If that has to happen, let's go ahead and clear all of these abandoned properties out and start courting responsible people to come in here and build. Once we get rid of some of these old raggedy houses that's all boarded up and it's been ripped off of all of their appliances and everything, I think once we get that part settled, we can start trying to get responsible people to move in these houses. Because if the consciousness doesn't change in this city, we're not going to get anywhere. The reason I say that, I can walk out my door right now and I can look at this house down here, and they got all these trash cans in the front of their driveway or in the front of their yard with no lids on it, trash everywhere. A person, if you're living in a house, you should look at that and know that it's not right. You shouldn't have to have your city to come and enforce that. A person should know their garbage shouldn't be out like that. So we really need to change the consciousness. I don't know how that can be done, but people need to show more respect for their neighbors and their neighborhood. I think there's been a lot of respect that's been lost in the community. Respect for your neighbors, those kind of things. We really need to change around here, and the only way we're going to change it, we have to change ourselves. Now, I try to be a responsible neighbor. Certain time you don't play loud music at 3 o'clock in the morning when people have to go to work the next day. But we have a couple houses on the street that does that kind of stuff. It's not right. You have a 90-year-old lady live next door to you, and you're making all that noise. It's not respectful. So until we change that kind of thinking that it's all right to disrespect your neighbors, until we change that, we're not going to get anywhere. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to do everything I can to be an example, and hopefully that can help.
Okay, so we were talking about the ways that your street has changed. Can I ask, what did your street club do to get one of the houses that was selling drugs shut down?
Okay, what we did is we got together, about 6 of us, and made an appointment with the mayor, Mayor Gary Norton of East Cleveland, and we went up there and sat down and talked to him about our concerns. And then talking to him, what he did was called in the chief, the commander of the detectives. And he came in and sat down and listened to our concerns. We gave him all the information we had, because as a block watch kind of organization, a street club, we're paying attention to what's happening at those 2 houses. So we gave the commander all the information we had, and he said he would take care of it. And within a matter of months, it was dealt with. That's just one house, though. But now the operation seems to be escalating at the other one. And I personally went down there to talk to the commander again and let him know what's going on at this point. So we, as a street club, are going to communicate with the police as far as that drug activity on our street, because we don't want it. So we will be communicating in every way we can until that house is shut down.
And do you know what kind of drugs they're selling?
I have no idea. We just know that they're selling drugs, but I don't know what they're selling, But any kind of drug activity is not good.
I was just wondering. I didn't.
Yeah, I don't even know. But we do know that in this area, there's a lot of crack cocaine. At one time, it was so bad that it was just all over the neighborhood. This whole area was saturated with it. You couldn't even walk down the street without being accosted by somebody coming to you and trying to sell you drugs. That was around in the, let me see, that was around in the 80s and 90s. But around 2006, things started changing. I think it has something to do with the police chief that they have now. He took a hard stance and he started cleaning up the streets. So, I mean, you're not accosted like you was before. You can walk down Hayden without some drug boy walking up to you trying to sell you something. I mean, they confronted me one time out there, and I got into it with the guys, and they ended up shooting me. So that's just how bad it was. I used to walk down to Windermere, catch the bus to my job, and then catch it back and walk back. But in walking back from Windermere, which is the end of the rapid station, I would be accosted by drug boys from the time I left Windermere to the time I got home. And one day I got into a big disagreement with them because I didn't like what they were doing and the way they were doing it. And I mean, they practically shut down Hayden Avenue for responsible citizens. But I got into it with one of the guys, and we started tussling, and he had a gun. He probably would have shot me in the head, but I managed to grab a hold of the gun, and he ended up shooting me in the leg. And they left me out there, but it worked out okay. I'm still here. Yeah, but that's just how bad it was. And that I'm just one incident these are things that was happening around that time in East Cleveland on a consistent basis every day. You would hear ambulance alarms. That's why it was so good to have Huron Road Hospital where it was at that time. Huron Road Hospital was a hospital that was right in East Cleveland, and it had a trauma center, you know, and if any place needed a trauma center, it would be East Cleveland, because you get more trauma accidents here than you do in any other community in this part of Ohio. So Huron Road Hospital was great. That day that I got shot, I was able to, they got me up to the hospital within a matter of minutes. So they were able to save my leg. You know, it'll never be the same, you know, but they was able to save it. If I didn't tell you that this leg had all this metal in it, and you wouldn't know it unless I tried to jump. I can't jump anymore. I don't run very fast anymore, but I was just thankful that Huron Road Hospital was there at that time. I don't know if I had to go all the way to Metro, like they say I would have to do today, I probably wouldn't have turned out as good. Yeah. Yeah.
What year was that?
That was in 90, let me see. I think that was more like 80, 89, something like that, around 88, 89. I think. I can't remember that far back. Yeah. But I think it was in the, no, it wasn't in the 80s. No, it must have been around 97, tell you the truth. I know, I realize now because, see, at the time I was a union steward at the VA Medical Center. That was around 87, 97. Yeah. That's how I remember. Yeah.
So, this leads into the next question. In what ways has the city changed over time, and what do you think contributed to those changes?
Okay, it changed over time. For one thing, they used to have a different kind of city government here. They had a city manager, and they had a city committee that ran the city. Now, not too long after I moved here the second time, they decided on getting a mayor-council form of government. And ever since they've had that form of government, they've had one bad mayor, bad council after another. Well, let's just say mayor now. One bad mayor after another. They was either robbing the city blind, or they didn't know anything about running a city. But there was a succession of bad mayors. The councils, they stayed in office for long periods of time, and they really didn't get much accomplished. The city, ever since we've had a mayor council kind of government, the city has gone down. Every year it's gone down. Now, not to say that can't change, because I think right now we have probably the best mayor that we've ever had in this city, because he's made friends with the right people, and I've seen some progress that he's doing. But that fight between the mayor and the council is still going on, like it has ever since they've had a mayor council here. They just seem to fight and bicker over each other instead of working together. So I think that the elected officials, by us not electing the right people, in the city government, I think that's got a lot to do with why this city is going down. And that's just one aspect. And then another thing was when the influx of drugs came through here. Eventually, East Cleveland became the go-to place for drugs. You know, this was the spot. that had an extreme amount to do with the decline of East Cleveland. And let me see, the elected officials, the drug trade, and then the commerce. Businesses started moving out of the city. And like Hayden Avenue out here, this used to be a very popular strip, you know, and it had businesses all up and down it, movie theaters, stores, large grocery stores, nightclubs. It had everything, cleaners, everything. Hayden was a busy section, but then they started leaving. The businesses started leaving, and nobody else was buying the businesses because of the bad city government and the drugs. Nobody wanted to come in here and do any business. So all of these things played a part in it. And then responsible residents was selling their houses and moving away. Some of them was just leaving the house and just going. So you got a lot of absentee landlords. It's a lot of things that made this city decline. But there's no reason why it can't come back. It's such an ideal location. I kind of feel like all of this was planned. Somebody sat and planned all of this. I feel that way because right today, property value is in such bad shape in East Cleveland that it's prime time for some contractors to come in here and start buying it up. I mean, you can buy a house. I could have bought that house next door for $5,000. A guy just asked me the other day, a house that he rehabbed, already it's livable and everything. He's got tenants in it. He wants to sell it to me for $15,000. You can get houses like that, like for real cheap around here. I know a guy bought a house for $500. Now these contractors are going to start coming in here and they're going to start swooping up all this property, and then they're going to do something with it. But if you let that happen, they're going to do with it what they want to do with it. I advise anybody that has any property in here now to keep it, do the best you can with it, because it's getting ready to be a renaissance in East Cleveland. I feel that way, and I know that a lot of other people do too. The reason I say there's going to be a renaissance because this is something that has to happen. The location is too ideal. You're at the end of the rapid transit line, Windermere. You're along the Euclid corridor, right next to University Circle. Cleveland Clinic isn't far away. This is an ideal location. You can get from East Cleveland to downtown Cleveland in 15 minutes, riding a bus, or 10 minutes if you ride the train. So it's such an ideal location. The lake isn't far away. So somebody has recognized this a long time ago. And there's entities out here that wanted this property value to drop so they can do what's about to start happening in this city. And it's going to happen.
So how has race or racism impacted you personally?
Race or racism? Personally, the only way it impacted me was early childhood when I was listening to rhetoric from other people, because like I told you earlier, I refuse to let it affect me to the point, because I know it's out there. I know it's there, but I just would not let it get to me because I've always felt a certain way about myself. And I just stuck with it. I'm just as good as anybody. So I always had the pride in myself, and I've always recognized there's good and bad in everybody. So race has never been an issue for me. And I feel thankful that I have not allowed it to affect my life. You know.
How has it impacted the city of East Cleveland?
Race has impacted the city of East Cleveland because I'd say when the demographics started changing in the city and it started becoming predominantly black, I don't know if businesses are not coming into the town because of the predominance here. I don't quite know. We had a grocery store here in East Cleveland, Tops, over on Superior and Lakeview. And this was a large grocery store like Dave's or Giant Eagle, and it was one of their competitors. But that grocery store shut down, and Giant Eagle, Dave's, none of them wanted to come into East Cleveland. So I think that's how race impacts the city. For some reason, businesses won't come in this community because they think they're not going to get the kind of customers or clients that they want. You know, so I think that's got a lot to do with it. You know, let me see. I guess that's the only thing I can think of how race is impacting the city. It's because businesses won't come in here. You know, because they feel like because of the black predominance, they're not going to be able to run a successful business. But you can, even in a black community, because if you look at places like Atlanta, Georgia, it's predominantly black, but they seem to be doing fine. You know, there's no reason why a city like East Cleveland can't do fine. You still have GE down here; they stayed. You know, but my hope is that businesses will start coming back. I think if we elect the right people, they're going to give businesses a reason to want to come back. You know, so. That's the only reason I can think how race has affected the city.
What about the media?
The media, yeah. The media is bad on East Cleveland because all I hear from the media are the bad things that happens around this community. To be perfectly honest with you, today I feel safer here than a lot of other communities. Crime has dropped significantly in this city. I've gone over the report, so I know how far they've dropped. But the media only identifies bad things that happens. There's a lot of good things going on in the city of East Cleveland that you never hear anything about. You got an organization called NOAH, Northeast Ohio Alliance for Hope. They are working to bring the people together so that they can stand up and try to move this city in the right direction by working together. Then you got an organization like East Cleveland Neighborhood Center. Now, this is an organization that is family oriented. They have all kinds of family activities that they do around this city, and you'd be amazed at how many people don't even know they exist. Same thing with NOAH. They don't even know they exist, but the media will harp on some bad incident instead of saying anything about some of these good things. We have a theater here, East Cleveland Theater. You know, it's been there ever since I've been here. We used to go to plays over there and have dinner over there, you know, early on when we first got married. But it's changed so much now, and they're not getting enough participation. We might even lose that, and that's a valuable asset for this community, you know. But yeah, the media has been effective in putting this community down.
And do you think that's racially motivated?
I know. I don't think it's racially motivated. I think it's shock motivated. That's how they sell their newspapers. That's how they sell their product is by shocking people. And you shock people, people will buy your paper or your magazine or watch your news show. You know, if you can give them some kind of excitement, you know, they don't want to hear nothing about how good something is happening. You know, if an organization is doing a good thing by bringing the community together, they don't want to hear that. They want something to shock people. That's how they make money. So no, I don't think it's racially motivated. A lot of things a lot of people try to make things into racially motivated things, but it's not. A lot of times, there's usually another alternate thing that's that they're trying to do, but people perceive it to be racist. Today, no. I don't think media would be. Maybe 50 years ago, yeah. But no, not today. Yeah. I think the media is a little more responsible than that. As far as, I don't think they would throw race out there. Well, yeah, they would. They would, if it's going to sell papers, you know. But that's their ultimate goal, is to sell papers, to sell a news show or something like that. I really don't think it's the race thing, you know. You know. Hopefully it's not today.
How has inequality impacted you personally? And remember that by inequality we mean, in its most basic sense, variability. When used to describe relationships, inequality speaks to unequal access to political, social, or material resources, opportunities, or rewards based on specific characteristics such as race, gender, age, physical or mental ability, sexual orientation, religion, class, geographic region, etc.
Okay, give me the question again.
How has inequality impacted you personally?
I'm trying to see how it's impacted me. I don't see how inequality has impacted me, since I don't believe in it, you know, in the sense that most people think of inequality. I think I'm just qualified as anybody. You know, I don't think it impacts me.
Has your status as a veteran ever caused you any problems?
My status as a veteran has not caused me any problems. It's been a good thing. You know, it makes me feel good about myself. And my status as a veteran, I feel like the country does a good job as far as taking care of me for my services rendered. You know, we do a good thing. We have one of the best VA medical centers in the country, and they do well by me. You know, as far as my status as a veteran, it's helped me in different ways because I was a veteran. Maybe that's one of the reasons I was able to work all my life. I've always had jobs. You know, I could leave one job and get another one in a blink of an eye, and I usually get good jobs. You know, and maybe my veteran status has something to do with it, because a lot of times I meet other veterans just working in companies, and the fact that I was a veteran shows that I have certain talents that most companies look for. You know, the military teaches you a lot, and it sticks with you after you get out. So I think most people recognize that a veteran is a good hire in most cases. Yeah. My veteran status has been a good thing for me.
So, what about ageism? Like, as you get older, do you find people are treating you differently?
I get more respect today. people seem to respect my decision making, and I think the more I mature, the more respect I get from people that I know or meet. Yeah.
And you were able to retire, is that right?
Yeah, I retired at the age of 55. I'm 60 now. I retired from the federal government. I worked for the VA Medical Center as a psychosocial rehab technician. What I did is I found jobs. I would bring veterans into the system and give them a job in the VA, and then I monitor their progress, and make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then I would report the information back to a team and let them know their progress. And then as they finish our program, I had connections throughout the city where I could get them jobs if they did well. Sometimes I would get them jobs within the system, the VA system. So when it came time, at one time they were doing cutbacks, and they wanted to cut back, so they started offering buyouts, and when they offered me a buyout, I jumped on it, because I thought it was a good opportunity to retire and maybe find another job, and that's what I did. So I did find another job, but part-time, because I didn't need to work full-time anymore. But that job turned out to be a good job. I was working for Staples Corporation and the office people, and they sent me to this company, whereas I supplied the company with all their office furniture and supplies that they needed. This was a company that had about 3,000 employees, called Corning Incorporated. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they are a glass making company. Anything that has glass in it, they have their fingers in it some way. Right now, their biggest industry is fiber optics. So they're doing well. They're a worldwide company, and I was assigned to them, and I had a warehouse and different stations to supply. I was like an in-house person for Staples, so I worked with them for a while until I got homesick and had to come back home.
Where was that?
Corning, New York. I lived on Buck Hollow Road, up on top of a mountain. That was one of my best experiences, because I lived on top of a mountain, out in the woods, and my closest neighbor was like a half mile away. It was so peaceful out there.
And did your wife stay in East Cleveland?
She stayed here, and we would travel back and forth. Stay for long weekends. She'd come up there, or I'd come down here. So we maintained, and thank God I had a strong wife who, kept things intact until I got back.
How long did you do that?
Well, actually, I was there almost 8 years. Yeah, but back and forth. Yeah. But it was a great experience. But eventually, I had to come back home. Yeah.
What do you do now?
Now I'm retired, and I'm a community activist. I spend most of my time doing whatever I can do to improve the quality of life in my neighborhood. I work for NOAA, like I said, Northeast Ohio Alliance for Hope, helping to organize people in our community. I'm on the board of East Cleveland Neighborhood Center. I'm also on board of the American Legion. I'm the first vice in the American Legion, post 315. So I'm also on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. So I do whatever I can to help improve the quality of life in my city. That's what I'm trying to do now. So I spend most of my time doing community activities. You know. Oh yeah, and I'm also a member of the Voicing and Action program.
I was going to ask about that later, but you want to talk about it now?
Well, it's a great program that's taking a audio video history of the citizens in East Cleveland, and it's giving them a voice to speak out on how they got here and what they saw as far as the transformation of the city and what they would like to see. You know, it's a great program that's giving a lot of voice to the community, to the residents of the city. And I'm just glad that I'm a part of it, you know, because I think this is a historic movement that if it's successful in this city, it can branch out into other communities around here so we can get an oral history of a lot of these communities, you know, and it's all starting right here in East Cleveland. Yeah.
So have you ever experienced classism?
Classism.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit when you were in Japan, and people were assuming that because
Yeah,
you were from
yeah.
America, you were rich.
Yeah. When you say have I experienced classism, as far as a negative way, no. I've always been a flexible kind of person, and I've been in just about every kind of environment you can think of. You know, I've lived a number of places around the country and around the world, and you know, and different class situations. But I've always been to adjust to whatever the environment was at the time. I've always been able to adjust. You know, as far as class is concerned, the same way as I look at racism, you know, I got just as much class as anybody. Yeah, I'm on just about any station that I need to be on. You know, I've had pretty good money in times in my life. You know, I've indulged with people who done quite well with their lives. You know, and I've been able to feel comfortable in just about any environment. Yeah. I've been involved with some of the worst that's out there, you know. But I don't have any negative connotations that class has presented to me either. You know.
Have the women in your life been impacted by sexism?
Well, I'll say not Karen. Karen is my wife now. I guess that's a question you would have to ask her, because I don't see it, because she's a confident person too. She's confident in herself, you know. So I don't see how she would let it affect her. But that's something that she would have to answer, you know. Even my first wife, I don't see it with her either, but it could be, you know. I don't know. No.
Do you feel like your daughters were treated differently than your son?
By me?
No. Well, okay, sure. By you.
Yeah, I did. I definitely treated my daughter different. You know, I mean, she was my daughter. You know, I guess I wanted to, I tried to treat her very well and spoil her as much as I could. And that way, if she got involved with a guy, he'd have to spoil her too, or she, you know, he'd have to spoil her, you know, or she would probably stay with him. Yeah, but I treat my daughter different, definitely. You know. I think daughters are special. You know, sons, you teach them how to be a man. And see me coming up. I came up in an area where you took care of your wife, or you know, it's a different age now. So things people think differently now. I brought my kids up in the old school kind of way, you know, teaching my sons to respect their girls or their other significant other, whoever, never to hit them and stuff like that. I teach my daughter to be respectful of herself. That was important. Yeah, but it's no doubt in my mind I treated them different. I think I treated her better. Yeah. Wow.
So how has inequality impacted the city of East Cleveland?
Inequality impact the city of East Cleveland. I guess I thought at one time maybe because things are unequal that we don't get a lot of things. When the government, when the state government sends down things, monies, opportunities to come into different communities, I think a lot of times East Cleveland is bypassed. I think they go around East Cleveland. That Euclid, South Euclid or Cleveland Heights might get certain things that East Cleveland doesn't even know about because because of inequality. I think that's why we're not getting the information we need to get into the city. So I think that hurts us. And I don't know. I think we do miss out on some things because of inequality. But see, that's where our local government comes in. Our elected officials, they're supposed to stand up and fight for us to get these things. But I think we're missing the track there. Mm-hmm. They're not doing their job. So I think that's how it's affecting us.
Okay, can we pause for a second?
Mm-hmm.
So, can you recollect a memory or instance when the community fought for something?
Yes. You want one?
Take several.
Okay. One would be the Huron Road thing that went on. Cleveland Clinic owns Huron Road Hospital. And first they told us that they were going to close the trauma center. So we, when I say we, there was residents with NOAA involved. We went down and started protesting the fact that they were closing the trauma center in an area where it's the most trauma in this whole part of Ohio. And I think in the whole state of Ohio. I think you had more trauma incidents than anywhere else in the state. You had it right here in East Cleveland. And when they talked about closing the trauma center, we got together and we protested against Cleveland Clinic for doing that. All of the time, Cleveland Clinic was planning on closing the whole hospital. They were just doing it a bit at a time. And so we, as residents, we got together and we protested Cleveland Clinic's main campus. We went down there and gave a letter to Dr. Caius, who is the head of Cleveland Clinic, and we presented him with a letter. I presented it myself to let him know that we would like to invite him to a forum in East Cleveland to talk about the closing of Huron Road Hospital. And he didn't show up, but he sent his people to talk to us about it. And with the help of NOAA, the community residents, Mayor Norton, we all got together and we talked about different things. And in the end, we ended up, although we lost Huron Road Hospital, we did manage to get another clinic built, which is Stephanie Tubbs Jones Center. Now they cater to high blood pressure, diabetes, the different things that's prevalent in the community. So that was a good thing that happened behind our fight with Cleveland Clinic. And then that large hospital, whereas most communities, when they shut a big hospital down, they leave that hospital there. But we convinced Cleveland Clinic to demolish it. And plus they gave us something like $20 million for the tax base that we lost. You know, so community came together, they fought, and they got something out of it that other communities didn't get when they lost their hospitals. So that was a successful venture, you know, with Cleveland Clinic. Then there was the time when the post office decided to move out of East Cleveland. Well, we got together with Noah, started pulling in the residents, and we went down there on Orange Avenue to the main post office, and we picketed it down, and we talked about it. Evidently, it worked out okay, because that was like 4 years ago, and we still have a post office where a lot of them are shutting down. So yeah, I have had a couple incidents. I can tell you another one when that heavy drug trade that I was telling you about was all over the place. We had a minister, his name was Chris Williams, and Chris would get out on the street. He was the pastor of a church, and there was a different mayor then. It was a mayor called Brewer. Eric Brewer was the mayor. No. Eric Brewer was not the mayor. It was Onawa. Onawa was the mayor of East Cleveland then. And he would get out there with Chris Williams and all of us and walk up and down the street and protest with signs and talk to the drug dealers that was out there to try to get them off the street. So that's another thing that community came together and fought for. And today, you don't see any drug dealers out on the streets like it was back then. So I know a number of different fights that the citizens have engaged in East Cleveland and won. You know, so that just shows you what people can do when they come together. You know.
So how have surrounding institutions and cities impacted East Cleveland?
Surrounding institutions. Well, we've been talking about Cleveland Clinic, for one. You know, the fact that they shut down Huron Road Hospital and we had to go through that whole fight and everything. They did build a new facility, Stephanie Tubbs Jones Center, which is a great facility. So that was a good impact for the city, behind the bad impact of losing Huron Road. So that's how that institution affected the city. Then you have University Circle Incorporated, which is right down the street, straight down Euclid Avenue, and and in fact, our communities butt each other at Lakeview. You know, well, University Circle Incorporated, it appears they've become landlocked. They bought so much money, so much property, they can't grow anymore in University Circle, and now they're starting to come this direction. So they've already built some apartments, townhouses in East Cleveland, and there's big plans to build a lot more. They're going to expand that apartment complex they have, and now they're talking about building other things in our community. So that's a couple of industries that's in the area that is going to have positive impacts on this city, as long as we can get the right people in office that will help do the things that they need to do. Now you said the cities too. You want to know about the other cities around? I don't see much about how Cleveland Heights, well, Cleveland Heights and East Cleveland shares a park, Forest Hills Park. But I don't see much of an impact that they have on us. I do have my own personal feelings that we are in such close proximity to each other that we should start trying to use shared services instead of everybody doing their own thing. I mean, all of us are hurting. You know, all of these cities around here are hurting. But if we shared our safety forces with Cleveland Heights, they share theirs with us. There's different things that can be done that we can work together to save money and improve the quality of services in this area. But for some reason, they don't seem to be embracing each other. And I don't understand that, you know. So I do try to bring these things up in town hall meetings, you know, but I really haven't gotten much progress on it yet. I asked the last mayor about shared services and he completely shut it down. I haven't asked Gary Norton yet, but I plan to. Yeah.
So what is your vision for the future of East Cleveland?
My vision for the future of East Cleveland is for the city to embrace diversity in this community, and for more businesses to move back into the city, you know, so that East Cleveland has access to basic needs. You know, I just want to get it back to that point so we can have a grocery store here. You know, we can have responsible elected officials. You know, these are the things I want to see for our city. You know, I just want to see it grow into something better than what it is now. It'll probably never be the same as what it was, but we can still build it into something that's really a good thing. You know, I guess my main view of the future is to see the city more diversified, you know, have more of everybody living here, you know. Yeah.
So tell me about major issues that need addressing in order to better your neighborhood, community, and city.
Things that need addressing in this community, one is the vacant and abandoned properties. You know, they're everywhere. In fact, this city used to boast about 40,000 people. This city used to have about 40,000 people. Now it's got about less than 20,000. You know, but a lot of the houses are still here. So you got half the population here, and you got a bunch of properties that's run down, not being taken care of, and it's bringing the property value down. You know, wait a minute, what was the question again? Am I going off?
Tell me about major issues that need addressing.
Okay, that's one of the major issues is the property value that's going down because of the abandoned properties. Another major issue is for a long time, we've been working with elected officials that has their personal agenda and is not helping the city grow. They're fighting amongst each other and not doing the things necessary to move the city forward. That's another issue right there. Now, at this period of time right now, we just laid off a lot of police, and we need to get these police back on board. You know, there's a lot of bad things. We need more commerce to move into the city. We need businesses. We need basic things, really quality grocery stores and restaurants. I mean, I have to go to another community in order to have go out and eat a decent meal at a restaurant. We really don't have anything here in the city. We just need to get some of these basic services back here again. So there's a lot of things wrong right now, and I know most of them, you know, but I really want to see this city progress. I've been here a long time, and I wanna do whatever I can to make it progress.
So our last question, what would you be prepared to do to make East Cleveland better?
Well, what would I be prepared to do? Whatever I can. Right now, I'm working on a project with the youth in the city, and I guess that's where I would probably point my attention to the youth. Right now, we have Martin Luther King Junior Civic Center down here where the kids can go and a lot of different activities, which is a great thing, you know. But because of the bickering between the council and the mayor, they've cut the hours down there, so we have less things for the kids to do. What I'm personally doing, I applied for a grant through Neighborhood Connections so that I could maybe buy some tools and equipment and put some of these kids to work, give them an opportunity to learn basic work skills, especially the seniors. You know, they're about to go out here, either if they don't go to college, they're gonna find a job, but they really need some instruction on good work habits and things like that. So Neighborhood Connections gave me some grant money to buy some yard equipment, things like that, so I can hire some kids. And I have the money now. What I did, it was went to the city. I went to Gary Norton, Mayor Gary Norton, and told him that we do have a grant, and I went to find out what the city can do to help us develop this program. And I explained to him what we're trying to do, and he immediately called his chief of staff in and gave us a contract to start cutting grass on these vacant and abandoned buildings. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm starting a program. It's called East Cleveland Youth Work Program. And we have a contract with the city, and we're going to start cutting these lawns. And not only doing the abandoned properties, we're also going to, I would like for these kids to interact with the seniors, you know, so they will, the streets that have street clubs, they will cut the seniors on their streets grass for like $10 a month, you know. So that's going to be a big thing, you know, to help the community, help the kids, help the seniors, and help the city, because the city doesn't have the money to pay the contractors to cut the grass on these vacant abandoned properties. They don't have the money. So my program is coming at just the right time, you know. So that's what I plan to do, you know, over the next few years. You know, I'm developing a program.
Would you be willing to go into politics?
No. I've been asked a number of times by people around the community, have asked me to run for council. They think that I would be a good council person, but I'm not interested in it. I feel like if I was to do that, I think I would make a good council person. But at this point in my life, with what I'm seeing transpiring down at City Hall, I don't think I want to be a part of that. You know, when people start working together, and that's the argument some people are telling me, well, we need somebody like you in order to get the right people to work together. But I'm 60 years old now. I got kids and grandkids. I even have a great-grandchild, and that's where my focus is today. You know, I do what I can in my community, but I don't think I want the headache that goes along with being a council person. You know, I'd rather get my headache from my grandkids. If I'm gonna have to get a headache. And fortunately, I have great grandkids. I have good grandkids. They don't give me a headache.
So that's the list of our formal questions. Is there anything that you wanted to say that we haven't covered? Well, I would like to say that I think this
program, the Voicing in Action program at Case Western Reserve Social Justice Institute, is a really great program. It's given us an opportunity to talk about how we feel about the community we live in. And I really thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to the interview. We've learned a lot. So that's it. We're just going to wrap up.
Okay, thank you.